Welcome to the Cody Leach Podcast, Episode 3. Alright guys, welcome back. It is Monday again. Starting to look a little bit light as far as movie news goes out there. We got Comic-Con coming around the corner, so a lot of our major stories are getting held off until then. So, still have some few things to talk about. When Comic-Con gets here, I'm sure I won't even know how much time I'm going to need to talk about all the stuff that's going on. Do have a few things that I want to talk about before I get to the movie news, though. So, everybody that goes to the movie theaters knows that it's always kind of a coin toss. You're either going to have a really awesome experience or you're going to have an absolute nightmare and regret going. Now, I love going to the movie theaters. It's one of my favorite things to do. Anytime there's a movie out that I want to see, very rarely do I not find the time or the means to go and see it. That being said, there's a few things that happens once you actually get to the movie theater that the more people who are going to the movies nowadays, it's starting to become more and more and more of a problem. Now, back when I was a kid, even the biggest blockbusters out there wouldn't be expected to make more than a couple $100 million. Nowadays, the biggest blockbusters out there, if they don't make less than $100 million, or at least $100 million, their first weekend opening, it's almost considered a bomb. That right there tells you how many more people go to the movies nowadays. And with the amount of people going to the movies, and the diverse amount, ages, backgrounds of people that are going to the movies, the old school movie theater rules and setups need to evolve with that. First and foremost, talking and texting on your cell phone during a movie in a movie theater. I'll go ahead and say it. If you're one of those people who does that just throughout the entire movie, you're a fucking asshole. Nothing is more aggravating than being drawn into a movie and just enjoying the experience, then all of a sudden you just have this blaring light shoot into your eyes from a couple rows down with somebody who's sitting there talking on the phone or texting or on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram, whatever the hell you're doing besides paying attention to the movie. Nothing's more disrespectful to the people around you that paid the same amount of money that you did to have a good experience. And what's funny to me is movie theaters have so many ads and so many signs and so many rules posted around saying no cell phone use, no cell phone use, no cell phone use, but nobody enforces it. Nobody walks through the movie theater to try to see this happening. Nobody does anything about it once it's happening. It's like they just put it up there as a disclaimer, kind of like the back of the cigarette carton, saying don't smoke these, and then everybody does it, and nobody cares. It's getting to the point where it's almost becoming a deterrent for going to the movie theater. When I went and saw The Conjuring 2, I swear, there was somebody about 6 or 7 rows ahead of me that seemed like every time a tense scene came up, there was something that she just had to look at on her phone. And in a pitch black theater, those bright ass cell phone screens that we have are like spotlights. So theaters either need to do one of two things. They either need to start enforcing that rule or just do away with it completely and lose a lot of people from going to the movie theaters. AMC even went out and they were trying to be progressive, and they came out with this thing, it was a couple months ago, saying that, we're going to start adhering, and we're going to start appealing to the younger audience nowadays. And we know that kids and younger teenagers love to text, and they can't go 90 minutes without texting. So we're going to start accommodating them, and we're going to allow texting and Facebook and everything in our theaters. And the outcry and the outrage was so loud that I don't even think it made it 24 hours before AMC theaters reversed it and came out with this big statement about, oh, sorry, never mind, we're not going to do that. That right there tells you that people don't like it. It pisses people off. So why is it something that everybody just tolerates? Why can't there be somebody on payroll on the theater to walk through the theater almost like a security guard, and when they see stuff like that, you give them a warning, and if it happens again, you get out. Something else that's becoming aggravating, the more and more people that go to see movies. And I know this is going to be a really weird concept for anybody that lives in the United States. Why don't we have assigned seating in movie theaters yet? Think about it. Every other thing that you pay to have a ticket for, be it concerts or a sporting event or something in like an opera or a play, you always have assigned seating once you buy your tickets. You don't just walk in, pick where you want, and sit down. You have a letter and a number that tells you where you are seated. Why don't we have that in movie theaters yet? I know it's a weird concept if you're in the U.S. because I don't think there's hardly any movie theaters in the U.S. that do this, but we're one of the only countries that don't. Here's a list of here's a list of countries that have assigned seating in all their movie theaters: the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, South Korea, Sweden, Turkey, India, Singapore, a lot of major cities in Japan, Russia, China. If all those countries can do it, and it's accepted, and everybody understands that that's what you need to do that's what's expected of you when you go to a movie theater, is to follow your assigned seating, why don't we have that in the U.S. yet? Reason I'm bringing this up, I just took Holly and the kids to go see The Secret Life of Pets today. We tried to go see it yesterday, but after I paid my money for all 4 tickets, stood in line to get popcorn and drinks, stood in line to get my ticket cut, and then walked into the theater, it was so fucking packed that the only seats were scattered seats in the first 2 rows that is right up against the screen. Why do we still have this process where you're going to go see a movie, and if it's the first couple of weeks the movie's out, you have to get to the movie theater almost an hour before the movie even starts to guarantee that you even get a decent seat? With all the technology and all the online ordering for almost everything and everything that we do with technology, I don't understand why we can't have something in place where you pay for your movie ticket, you go to a kiosk, you choose whatever seat you want out of the seats that are remaining, it gets printed on your ticket, and that's where you sit. So there's no more getting to the movie theaters an hour, 45 minutes before the movie and still hoping that you get a good seat. Now you can buy your tickets a day before. You can buy your tickets even if you wait till 20 minutes before the movie's there. You can look online and say, okay, how many more seats are left in this theater? Okay, this one's got 5 seats left. Let's wait for the next time. Oh, that one's almost completely empty. Let's go ahead and buy our tickets for that one, and we'll get to the movie theater at 6 o'clock. It's so simple, and nobody is even presenting this as an option to get rid of this issue. I mean, how many times have you went to the movie theaters and you've been with a group of people and you can't even sit together? Because even if it's a 2/3 full movie theater, people are so spread out throughout the whole theater that there's only 2 seats here, 3 seats here, 1 seat here, and everybody has to split up, or you have to do that uncomfortable thing where you talk to somebody and try to get them to scoot down, and all that can be eliminated. And it's not going to be something very hard. I guarantee you, if they did that nationwide, it would take less than a couple months for everybody to just go along with it. Even if they had whatever discrepancies against it that they had, it would make the theater experience so much better. And you can already tell that movie theaters are scrambling, even though movies are making tons and tons and tons of money nowadays. Not all of that goes to the theater. So the theaters themselves, you can tell that they're scrambling to make more money just because of how much the concession stand has went up. Ever since popcorn and drinks and candy and all that stuff got really popular back in the Great Depression, the prices for those snacks at a movie theater have increased almost 700%, while ticket prices have only raised about 70% since then. Everybody knows that this is, these prices are huge now. That's why people sneak candy and pizza and all kinds of food into the movie theaters, because they know when you go there, I know whenever I go, even if it's just me and Holly or me and my dad or anybody like that, we always divide it up. One person buys the tickets, one person buys the snacks, and guess what? We end up spending about the same amount of money. 2 Cokes and a tub of popcorn is the same as 2 tickets. And the reason a lot of people aren't going to the movie theaters nowadays, and less is because of things like this, because they go there and they're miserable. Because you either have people texting, or you can't find a seat, or you get split up from your party, or any number of things that they need to start enforcing more. Bringing in, infants into a horror movie while they're screaming and crying the whole time. No lie, about two years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, I went to see a movie, and there was a family that came in that sat about 3 or 4 rows ahead of me, and they brought a tablet for their kid to watch a movie while they were watching their movie. So the whole time the movie's playing, there's another movie playing off to my peripheral vision off to the right. The only reason I could think that theaters aren't adapting this yet is because they want you to be in the theater waiting an hour before the movie, because that's when they get to present all their ads. And you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're watching the advertisements, you're getting hungry, you're getting thirsty, so you end up buying more waiting for the movie to start versus the people that get there right before the movie starts. They get one round of drinks, sit down, and they don't move until the end of the movie. But anyway, I'll stop ranting on that, but as far as I'm concerned, they need to start doing some more things to make these theater experiences a lot better, because it's getting a little bit out of hand. Alright guys, moving on to the movie news. So something pretty interesting dropped. So Joe and Anthony Russo, if you don't know who they are, the Russo brothers, they had a lot of work in the TV industry. So they did a lot of work on Arrested Development and Community and Happy Endings. These are the guys that directed Captain America Winter Soldier and then went on to direct Captain America Civil War. And they're still going to be directing the upcoming Avengers movies, the Infinity War movies. So Joe and Anthony Russo are now going to be adapting The Warriors, the 1979 movie, into a drama series for HULU. Now, The Warriors was a really popular movie when it came out, and it's basically the story of a lot of these gangs in New York City. And the leader of the biggest gang in the city calls all the gangs together for a meeting with a truce that nobody will try to stir up any trouble or try to fight anybody until the meeting's over with. And he basically is trying to get all the gangs to unite under one so that they can rule the city. And while he's talking to everybody, he gets shot. And somebody runs up and says that the Warriors did it. And the movie is basically the Warriors, who are innocent, trying to make it back from that meeting all the way back to Coney Island, which is their home turf. And all the gangs in New York are after them. It's a very cool movie. And it's on Netflix right now. If you haven't seen it, give yourself a treat and go ahead and watch it. But they've been trying to redo, remake, reboot The Warriors for quite some time. Now, before he passed away, Tony Scott was working on The Warriors reboot. And obviously he passed away, so that went away. And I gotta say, the idea of adapting The Warriors into an hour-long drama series, especially on something like Hulu or Netflix where they can keep it rated R, that would be something really cool. And with Joe and Anthony Russo on top of it, you know that the action scenes are going to be awesome. They could do something really cool with that. And I don't know if they're going to follow the story of the movie or not, or I don't know if maybe it's going to be like a prequel series where it just shows the Warriors and some of the things that they've done before the events of the movie. You know, they had a PlayStation 2 game that came out off of the movie by Rockstar Games, and the game was basically a prequel to, the first half was like a prequel to the events of the movie, and then the events of the movie played out the last half of the game. So I don't know, maybe they're going to do something like that. But I've always been a big fan of the Warriors, and seeing it come to one of these paid subscription services for an hour-long drama series is something that should be really cool. So I'll keep an eye out for that one. The BFG. So this is the movie that Steven Spielberg just made, based off of the Roald Dahl novel. And it stands for, the Big Friendly Giant. The BFG had a $160 million budget, and its first week it walks away only making $19.6 million domestic. Now, I have to check a few facts, but I think this is probably the least financially successful movie that Steven Spielberg has done in quite a while. I know he's had a few of them out there in his career, but not very many. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they marketed this movie, because I'll be honest with you, I love Steven Spielberg, but I didn't have any desire to go see this. The trailers didn't really grab me. We've seen quite a few giant movies over the past few years. You had, Jack and the Giant Slayer, and, then they had, it wasn't really a giant movie, but Where the Wild Things Are, and just those kind of, fantasy-type movies. We've had quite a few the past few years, and I guess Steven Spielberg's name wasn't enough to diversify this one from all the others. So the trailers weren't really weren't very appealing, and honestly, I don't think a lot of people recognized the book, because I don't know how many people I either saw online or had heard whenever you're in the movie theater and you see the trailer for the BFG. What is the BFG? A lot of people didn't even know what the BFG stand for, which is something else that I don't remember what the poster looked like. I'm sure it showed a giant, but if it just said Steven Spielberg presents the BFG, nobody knows what the hell that means. So, unfortunately for him, looks like he's got a bomb on his hands. and I've heard the movie's actually pretty good. So that's it's unfortunate, but the BFG, 19.6 million. That's pretty rough. All right, so Pixar has come out and said that after The Incredibles 2 comes out in 2019, they're not going to focus on sequels for a long time. They're going to put a lot more effort into original concepts. So Pixar, everybody knows who Pixar is. You know, they came out with Toy Stories and Monsters, Inc. and Ratatouille and Up and just most recently Inside Out. And they've been doing kind of a thing where they'll do a sequel and then they'll do an original movie, and then they'll do a sequel and then an original movie. You know, they had 3 of the Toy Stories, they had 2 of the Monsters, Inc. movies, they had 2 of the Cars movies, and they've got Cars 3 coming out June of next year, Toy Story 4 coming out in 2018, and then, like they said, Incredibles 2 2019, and no original movies coming out between then. Now, Toy Story 4 I can't wait for, and Incredibles 2 I can't wait for. I've been waiting for an Incredibles sequel since the first one. That's one of my favorite Pixar movies. And all the Toy Story movies get better with each one, so I'm curious where they're going to take that one, being that they've wrapped up the whole story with Andy. Cars 3, I've never been a fan of any of the Cars movies, so I guess they're just doing that to sell toys. But nonetheless, Pixar getting back to doing original concepts is actually something that I'm glad to hear, because Pixar is one of the few companies out there that nearly everything they do is awesome. You know, Ratatouille and Up and the original Toy Story and The Incredibles and Inside Out, all those movies are great. And them putting more effort into coming up with original and new ideas to bring to the screen is definitely a lot better than just cranking out the same thing over and over and over again. So that's good news. Alright, so Star Trek news. So they've come out and said that in Star Trek Beyond, the newest movie that's going to be coming out in a couple weeks, that the character Sulu is finally going to be portrayed and revealed as a closeted homosexual in the movie. And it's kind of an odd piece of news. So George Takei made the role famous in the original series, the Star Trek series, and George Takei is a homosexual. So it almost seems like they're changing the character, not quite as a parody of George Takei, but because he was a gay guy playing Sulu, they're going to turn the character into a gay guy. They said that in the story, basically, at some point, he's going to reveal that he has a husband and a child waiting back home for him. And that's how they're going to reveal it to everybody. Now, how much of a story that reveal is going to be in the overall movie, I'm not sure. If it's just going to be like one little line, like, oh, I got a husband and a child, and everybody's like, oh, okay. Or if it's going to be like this big, like, oh my God, I never knew he had a husband, and they're going to, that's going to be his entire story arc for that movie. But George Takei has come out and said that he is not happy with that decision. He said that he's not happy that they've changed the character that Gene Roddenberry originally came up with, because he said that the original version of that character was not gay. And if they wanted to put a gay character into Star Trek, they should have created something new instead of changing, a beloved character. And Simon Pegg, he plays Scotty in the movies, and he also co-wrote this third movie, Star Trek Beyond. And Zachary Quinto, who plays Spock, who is a homosexual actor, have come out and they've defended the decision. Simon Pegg says that he respects George Takei's opinion, but they wanted to do something with the story to take it that way, and that's what they chose to do. And then Zachary Quinto basically came out and said that being that this is a new rebooted universe and a new timeline, they can do whatever they want with the timeline, and it shouldn't mess with the original vision of the character. So he was basically defending it and saying that George Takei is wrong. But this is something that's been in the media a lot lately, trying to have a lot more diverse characters, whether it be diverse races or diverse sexualities and everything. And I've always been of the opinion that it's good to diversify movies and it's good to diversify roles, but I'm not a fan of changing things just for the sake of changing it, with it not serving the character or the story or the purpose of the movie at all. And like I said, I don't know how the story is going to serve the movie, so I can't, the jury's out on that till I see the movie. But, they've had a lot of people wanting the princess in Frozen. I think her name's Elsa. They want Elsa to be a lesbian, and they've got they had a movement there for a while where they said that they should take Captain America and Bucky Barnes and make them into a gay couple. And I don't know. I mean, it's a controversial topic, so I'm hesitant to really speak too much on it. But like I said, if it's not going to serve the story, and it's not going to serve the character, and it's not who the character is, I'm much more on George Takei's side. If you want to add diversity to a movie, then add it with new characters. Add that in there, and by all means, make it serve the story well, but don't change characters just for the sake of changing them. So, Star Trek Beyond coming out in a couple weeks. We'll have to see how that story plays out. Also staying in the sci-fi realm. So, Neil Blomkamp has had an Alien sequel kind of in pre-production for quite a while. So, Neil Blomkamp's the guy that came out onto the scene with District 9, which is a really, really cool science fiction movie with some of the best effects you're ever going to see on a small, small budget. And his notoriety really blew up with that movie when it came out. And then he went on to direct Elysium with Matt Damon, which I love Elysium. Might even like it better than District 9, but a lot of people didn't for whatever reason. They thought it was one of the main criticisms I saw was that it was very preachy and kind of beats you over the head with social issues. Which isn't wrong necessarily, but it didn't really bother me. But I was a big fan of Elysium. Then he came out with Chappie, which I have not seen, because I have not heard a single word of positive word of mouth on that movie. All I've heard is how garbage it is. So, Neil Blomkamp, his next project, he came out with these concept art pictures I'd say about 8 or 9 months ago. And it was basically concept art images of Sigourney Weaver's character Ripley from the Alien movies and Michael Biehn's character Hicks. And it was them as their older selves, and it had like different armor that kind of resembled the xenomorphs and stuff like that. And everybody was kind of like, oh, that'd be cool if that guy should do an Alien sequel. His special effects and his storytelling and everything would be pretty cool. And I don't know if it was because of the positive word of mouth from that, kind of like Deadpool got everybody talking and then they decided to go forward with it, or if that was just something that they released and they already knew that they were kind of working on it. But then Neil Blomkamp came out and said, yes, I'm working on a sequel to Alien. And it's going to ignore Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. It's going to take place right after James Cameron's Aliens. And it's going to show where Ripley and Hicks and Newt ended up after Aliens. And everybody got really excited. And then everybody kind of got nervous after Chappie came out. And then this huge debate got started about whether or not this guy really is the best person to kind of reinvigorate the Aliens franchise. Then, not too long after that, Ridley Scott came out and said, well, that Prometheus sequel that I was making, that I said wasn't going to have any aliens in it, it's actually going to have aliens in it. It's going to be called Aliens Covenant. And I'm going to be making 3 more sequels after that. And this Neil Blomkamp is not going to be making any movie until I'm done with my movies. So that pretty much, you would have thought, put a nail in the coffin with Neil Blomkamp's Alien sequel. Yet, on 2 or 3 different occasions since that announcement came out, Sigourney Weaver has been asked about it, and she's still holding strong and telling everybody that this Neil Blomkamp movie is still happening. About 3 or 4 months ago, she was asked about it right after the announcement was made that, it was going to be on the shelf or canceled completely until Ridley Scott was done doing what he's doing, and she still said that, no, we're still talking about it, we're still getting ready to do it, it's still going to be happening. Well, she just got interviewed again and is still saying the same thing. She's confirmed officially that it will ignore Alien 3 and Alien 4, and it's going to continue right after James Cameron's Aliens, and she's saying that this movie is still happening. So this is going to be a kind of a weird back and forth until we actually start seeing some principal photography go on. But apparently after all the excitement is done with Ridley Scott's movies, we're still going to be having some continuation from the original Aliens. So looking forward to seeing how that whole thing works out. Flatliners. This is a movie that came out in the 90s, and it starred Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, Oliver Platt, Billy Baldwin, and Julia Roberts. and it kind of followed the story of some medical students led by Kiefer Sutherland, and they start experimenting where they start stopping their hearts to experience death and then bringing themselves back to life so that they can see whether or not you have like out-of-body experiences, or there's a light at the tunnel, or what kind of experience you have actually being dead. And after they all go under and then come back, supernatural things start happening to all of them. Little things from their past start coming up, and they start seeing some entities here and there. It's kind of campy, but it's a very cool 90s movie, and I've always thought it was a pretty good movie. Flatliners is going to be remade. Big surprise. The funny thing that's coming out of this news, though, is that Kiefer Sutherland is actually going to have a starring role in the remake. So his role is dubbed as a seasoned doctor. So I really don't know if he's going to be playing the same character. Like they're going to be coming across him and he's like, hey, you really don't want to do that. We kind of did that back in the 90s and you don't want to do that. Or if he's just going to be there just so you can go, oh, hey, that's Kiefer Sutherland, and he's going to be in it for 2 seconds. Or if he's going to be playing a teacher at the college, or, depending on how close to the same original story they're going to be having this. But the new one apparently is going to be starring Ellen Page, Diego Luna, Nina Dobrev, James Norton, and Kiersey Clemens. So, and it's going to be directed by Niels Arden Oplev, who is actually pretty cool. He's the one who directed the first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the original Swedish movie. And it's going to be written by Ben Ripley, who wrote the source code, which is a very cool, very well written movie. So this might end up being something really good, as long as they do something new with it. And the new technology we have nowadays, and if you bring it more into the horror thriller element and not so much campiness, they could do something cool with it that would make it new and fresh, and not just kind of treading the same territory that the first one did. So Flatliners remake on the way. Now this piece of news is pretty interesting. So Ubisoft, they're a big video game company. They make the Assassin's Creed games and Splinter Cell, and they just came out with The Division, and they did the Prince of Persia games. Ubisoft made their own movie side of their company that's going to start creating major motion pictures off of their major movie properties, or major video game properties rather. And the big one coming out at the end of this year is Assassin's Creed, starring Michael Fassbender. So Ubisoft's European boss, Alan Core, has come out and said that the Assassin's Creed movie is not going to make a lot of money. He says that it's a lot more of a marketing thing. This is his actual quote. It is a lot more of a marketing thing. It is also good for the image of the brand. Although we will make some money, it is not the purpose of this movie. The purpose is to bring Assassin's Creed to more people. We have our core fans, but what we would like is to put this franchise in front of a lot more people who maybe will then pick up future Assassin's Creed games. Well, if there was any way to show less confidence in your upcoming movie, I'd be curious to see what it is. All this tells me is that him and some other execs, and this is all speculation obviously, but him and some other execs at Ubisoft must have seen the final cut of this movie, and with all the backlash that Warcraft just got, and all the backlash that video game movies in general have attached to it, he must have looked at it and said, yeah, this movie's not going to turn anybody's opinion. This movie sucks. We're not going to make a whole lot of money on it. It's going to be a bomb. But maybe some more people will play Assassin's Creed games. Pretty stupid thing to come out and say. Because now everybody that gets a hold of this story is going to be chopping up what he said. And you're going to see headlines everywhere. Ubisoft execs have no confidence in an Assassin's Creed movie. And Assassin's Creed was a movie that I'm hesitantly optimistic about. Video game movies as a whole usually really suck. They don't get a whole lot of good talent attached to it, and a lot of times they either try too much to be like the video game, or they try to do too much different from the video game. And for whatever reason, it very, very rarely, if ever, ends up working out very well. But the big reason Assassin's Creed had a lot of hope attached to it was because Michael Fassbender has been attached to it for as long as I can remember. And Michael Fassbender is not the type of actor to just do something for the money. He usually does really, really good roles that he believes in and he can dive into and bring something good to the screen. And even though the first trailer, it didn't show a whole lot, the first trailer wasn't anything spectacular, I was still holding out hope that it was going to be something cool to see. Now, I'm not the biggest Assassin's Creed fan. I did not like the first game at all. And kind of a weird trend that Ubisoft has with their games is their first game always ends up seeming, like with a new property, their first game always ends up seeming like almost like a tech demo that they've fleshed out over a whole game. And it always has really cool concepts and cool ideas, but never ends up being the best game in the world. Then they go back to the drawing board, they fine-tune everything, they trim the fat, they put everything in there that everybody liked, take everything that everybody hated out of it, and the sequels almost always end up being awesome. And Assassin's Creed 2 was no exception. Assassin's Creed 2 I absolutely loved. That was the first PlayStation game that I ever got the Platinum Trophy on. Since then, you had Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, then you had Assassin's Creed Revelation, and then you had Assassin's Creed 3, and then you had Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and then you had Assassin's Creed Unity, then you had Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Assassin's Creed is almost like the most overexposed video game out there next to Call of Duty. They never really do anything that new with it. It's just the same thing over and over and over and over and over again with a different character's name and somewhat of a different story. So after the third one disappointed me slightly and the fourth one disappointed me a lot, and then Assassin's Creed 3 completely not reaching my expectations, I pretty much gave up on the franchise. It's funny to me that they're coming out and they're saying, one of the most successful and the most overexposed video game franchises ever needs to make a motion picture to put the words Assassin's Creed in front of more people. How many more people are there left you're going to get to play Assassin's Creed that aren't already playing it, already gave up on it, or still biting and buying the games every single year? So, very weird, very odd business decision, and very strange for him to come out this far in advance of the movie and say some things like this, but, I don't know. All that does is cast a lot of doubt, and there was already some doubt on Assassin's Creed. But the movie's going to be coming out this holiday season, December 21st, so we will see if maybe what they saw wasn't what everybody else is going to be seeing. Maybe we'll have a good movie on our hands, or maybe we'll have another video game movie in the can that ends up on the bargain bin. Alright guys, we're going to be moving on now to trailer talk. So I have just a couple trailers to talk about this week. Nothing extraordinary. Like I said, a lot of the big trailers are going to be debuting here in a few weeks at Comic-Con, so then I'll have a ton of things to talk about. But I do have two very cool-looking movies to talk about. First one is called Edge of Winter, and this is directed by Rob Connolly, and it's starring Joel Kinnaman and Tom Holland. So Joel Kinnaman played in the show The Killing, and he's an awesome actor, and his character on The Killing was probably the best part about that show. And he's done a few movies before that. I think he's Dutch, so he's done some Dutch movies. But he was also in the RoboCop remake from a few years ago, which I liked more than most people. And he was in Run All Night with Liam Neeson, and he did very good in that. Now he's going to be starring as Rick Flag in the upcoming Suicide Squad movie. So, the guy's got a pretty good career behind him and a pretty good career ahead of him. And Tom Holland is the young actor that they just cast as Spider-Man, and he was in Captain America Civil War. And the story of this movie basically is Joel Kinnaman's like an estranged father to these two boys, and they get dropped off to spend time with him. I don't know if it's just obviously it's during the winter, I guess, but I don't know. They get dropped off with him, and while he's trying to reconnect with his sons and kind of show that he's a good father and kind of get to know his kids, they're out and they get stranded by this brutal winter storm. And it shows them basically like they wreck their car and they're forced to walk back to wherever they're trying to get through the wilderness. And slowly throughout the trailer, you start to see that Joel Kinnaman's kind of a guy that looked like he might be a little bit unhinged, which is the best characters that Joel Kinnaman plays, because he played that in The Killing very well, and he's played that in a couple other roles where he does a good job at playing a good guy with a dark past or some kind of a tweak that comes out once in a while that, you know, he might not be good, but he's redeemable, and he plays those characters very well. So the trailer makes it look like Joel Kinnaman's character might be one of those guys that you don't quite know if you're on his side or not. You know, he looks like he's really looking out for his boys and his best interest, and then he also looks like he might be a little off his rocker. But it looks like it might be a really cool character study of him, and kind of showing, like, I don't know if it's going to be a battle of wills between him and Tom Holland at some point, or if it's going to be a battle of wills for all three of them versus the people and the elements that they encounter trying to get back home. But it's going to be out in theaters August 12th, and it looks like it might be something really cool in our hands. So go ahead and check out the trailer on YouTube. Now, the other movie, which is also coming to theaters August 12th, is called Bloodfather. And it's directed by Jean-Francois Richet. It's a French director. It's a French movie, but it's an English-speaking French movie. And it stars William H. Macy and the great Mel Gibson. Now, I know Mel Gibson is a big topic of controversy. He had that whole thing back in like 2004 where he had a whole bunch of racism come out, and, you know, he was against Jewish people, and he had the drunken, or that whole thing with the cops. And it's very unfortunate because Mel Gibson, regardless of what you think about him, you can't deny the guy's one of the best actors that's ever been on screen. You know, the Lethal Weapon movies, the Mad Max movies are all great. And I really miss seeing Mel Gibson on the screen. You know, Expendables 3 came out a few years ago, and without a doubt, his role as the villain was the best part about that movie. So, and you've seen Mel Gibson, even after that whole thing where he kind of left Hollywood for a while because nobody wanted to work with him. And apparently it's still that way. I think he was actually, whenever The Hangover 2 is about to come out, there was a little small role in the movie with a tattoo parlor. And Mel Gibson was originally supposed to play that tattoo artist, but I believe Zach Galifianakis said that if Mel Gibson comes on, he's going to quit the movie. So there's still a lot of people out there that are unforgiving for Mel Gibson. So the guy he doesn't get very much work anymore. But the few times you have seen him get movies here and there since that whole controversy, they've kind of been hidden gems. You know, he had that movie Edge of Darkness come out, and where he's trying to, you know, he's basically like a cop trying to investigate and avenge his daughter's death. And that was a very dark, bloody, crazy action thriller. And then he had this little movie called Get the Gringo, which was almost like a spiritual sequel to Payback, if you've ever seen that. And that was a really cool kind of surprise. Now, this movie shows him kind of playing this old, grizzled ex-con. And I guess he reunites with his estranged daughter. She looks like she's about 16. And when she comes and starts, you know, trying to reconnect with him, quickly he finds out that she's actually on the run. There's a bunch of drug dealers who are out there after her trying to kill her. So it looks almost like a siege movie / kind of like a on the road kind of movie. And basically Mel Gibson's just trying to protect his daughter from these drug dealers. And from the trailer, it looks like he's the classic badass Mel Gibson. And William H. Macy plays a role, which I don't know how big it's going to be, but basically somebody who lives next to Mel Gibson and helps him protect his daughter. So it looks like it could be really cool, really bloody, crazy little action thriller. But we'll have to see when it comes out. Like I said, it also comes out in theaters August 12th. Well, that about does it for this episode, guys. Like I said, the news is kind of getting a little bit slim nowadays. But here in a couple weeks, I should be having some pretty big, major things to talk about. But until then, I'll still be hunting for little things to talk about, keep everybody up to date, and maybe even find some more things to talk about like I did today about the whole issue with our experience in the theaters nowadays. But go ahead and like and subscribe, and if you have any comments, go ahead and post them here in SoundCloud, or you can post them on Facebook. And I'm always looking for movie questions. You know, I had the Q&A episode a couple of days ago, and so far, that was the most successful episode I've done. You know, it climbed up to almost 20 views in 2 days. which is the fastest I've seen one of my podcast episodes reach that number. So apparently you guys like hearing me talk about random topics and you like hearing me answer your questions, so go ahead and send them in. You can post them in the comments here, like I said, on SoundCloud. You can send them to me in a message, or you can send them to me as a comment on Facebook, but I'll keep them all together. If I have a bunch of them, I'll do another Q&A episode, and if I only have a few, I'll add them on to the end of these Monday movie news episodes. But thank you for listening, and I will see you again in a couple days with our next Top 5 episode.